Hello, I am Rosario Granados and I want to share with you Painted Cloth. This is the start of the show because in a way it's a summary of all the topics that are going to be addressed in the exhibition. So what we see here is a painting which narrative is anchored in the depiction of garments. What we see on the right is a magnificent female figure. She is a statue of the Virgin Mary and is displayed on top of an altar. You have an indigenous man wearing his traditional garments, and you have him in a position that is very non-straightforward. And he is being baptized by two men in black robes, Augustinian friars. He's on his knees, and so you could argue that he's accepting willingly this religion that was being imposed on him, but also question whether or not he is happily accepting this new religion or he is being dominated by it. And in this gray area is where many of these paintings were produced. And I think it is important to consider both possibilities, as it will help us access the beauty of these paintings with this understanding of how controversial the colonial period is, but at the same time allowing us to admire the beauty of all the paintings included in the exhibition. The section cloth making is all about the spinners, the tailors, the seamstress, people who really were the ones making the objects discussed in the exhibition. This painting, for instance, shows a man of indigenous and black descent making a garment. We don't know if this man was accepted or worked as a master tailor or if he is working for somebody else. He is wearing himself a French-inspired suit, which is interesting because you would imagine that these garments were only used by men of Spanish descent. I wanted to have the opportunity to show a man of mixed race being active in the production of these garments. And I think it is important to emphasize the active role of people of different races and different social classes in the creation of these garments. This painting is the inspiration of the show. I fell in love with it in 2015 when I saw it with my graduate students at the Art Institute in Chicago, where I was teaching. What we're seeing is a portrait of a statue, the patroness of Cusco, Our Lady of Bethlehem. The statue is placed on a processional platform, which is what we see depicted on the bottom end. The donor on the bottom left is the person who paid for this painting, and is important because he is introducing the statue and the painting of the statue to us. We think that he is indigenous descent because of his skin color and because the way he has his hair. He is wearing European fashion, therefore he's making a statement of how he is integrated into the colonial system. The painting was the inspiration because of the relevant nature of the depiction of textiles in the painting. That you don't see the statue, you only see the vestments of the statue. So there is no body, but there is textile. And I wanted to understand why textiles were so important, how convey the idea of a sacred body, of a sacred statue, and how they were perceived by devotees that were supposed to admire this object while it was walking around. I knew that there was something to go to dig into the representation of the fabrics. And I think we did, no? The exhibition, it's all about why garments were so relevant for ritual objects like this one. This sculpture, it depicts the Virgin Mary. The face and hands are made in ivory, but the rest of the body is a rather complex technique. The core of it is wood, and then plastered fabric was attached to that core in order to recreate the fancy waves of real fabric. Another artist came and painted it in order to look like those fancy garments. So it is a combination of fiction and reality, and fabric being recreated in a way to look fancier of what the original fabric was. In the section Ritual Garments, I'm particularly proud of how we were able to bring this painting to life. We see in this painting a priest offering his back to the crowd in front of a very beautifully decorated altar. We decided to unfold the image within the gallery space and present the same garment that he's wearing with a real chasuble in the gallery and a real altar cover. Take a look at this beautiful piece. It's called a chasuble, and it's the most common garment used by priests in the Catholic Church. It is made with something that is called hilos entorchados, which means that a silk thread has been covered all around by thin plaques of silver. Imagine how beautiful it would have been to see this sparkling with the candlelight. The third element in conversation in this gallery is this piece. Apparently, it is a piece of fabric, but if you come closer and look carefully, you would realize it is a painting, a painted cloth indeed. This is a representation of Our Lady of the Forsaken. We have to remember that this is a depiction of a statue that was actually dressed with real fabrics in order to enhance its presence within the space of the church. And I love this painting for many reasons. The first, perhaps, are the curtains on the corners. They are a reference to the fact that these cult images were normally hidden from the gaze of those visiting their shrines. Only on special occasions, these curtains would open. The fact that we have these curtains on the painting alludes to that magical moment when people were able to see an image that they thought was of miraculous nature. And that is the reason why we have curtains at the beginning of the show. One of the things that I love about this painting is its brocateado. Brocateado is a technique that consists of diluting gold powder on oil and then adding it directly to the canvas in order to recreate very lavish fabrics. These details are very characteristic of the indigenous painters of Cusco. It is incredible the different patterns that they use in different parts of the garments. We have various examples of this brocateado technique. We have the presentation of Mary into the temple and also San Lorenzo coming to painted cloth from the Barbosa Stern collection in Lima, Peru. It has a kind of three-dimensional part of it that really makes you wonder how it was made. The holiness of cloth is a section that starts, not surprisingly, with an image of La Verónica. The representation of a woman holding a piece of fabric where legend has it, the face of Christ was miraculously imprinted. We see that José de Alcíbar, a painter active in Mexico City in the 18th century, dared to place his signature at the bottom right of the fabric, making a statement of he being a divine author. We were able to present this painting displayed next to this other painting in which Our Lady of Guadalupe is being presented in a similar fashion. According to legend, Our Lady of Guadalupe was also a miraculous imprint. And the fabric, the indigenous fabric in which it was imprinted, is being presented here very clearly by being pinned to the corners. And this is a statement that painters wanted to make in 18th century Mexico in order to emphasize that painting should be considered a liberal art and not only a mechanical one. And by that I mean that they wanted to be recognized as intellectuals able to create ideas and to illustrate complex ideas, and not only as artisans, only using their hands. One fascinating fact is that we are seeing these two paintings by the same painter coming back together after more than 200 years of being apart. The last section of the show is called Wearing Social Status, and we included a section of indigenous garments, where we see how the traditions of the indigenous and European peoples were brought together. And one favorite example is this anaku, this Andean dress meant to be wrapped around the woman's body, that is made using these traditional techniques, using mainly wool, but adding cotton to make it. You have in the lower elements different animals. Now you have butterflies, birds, but on the top part you have images of mermaids and also of Collas, the princess of the Andean world, wearing anakus and yiclas, which were the shawls worn by indigenous women. And I absolutely think it's fabulous to have a garment that includes representations of the same garment in which it's being embedded. This is one of the most important pieces in the exhibition as well. What she's wearing is known as robe à la française. It's a kind of garment that was the fanciest of all garments for women. Two elements are very important in this kind of nobility portraits. One is the detail in which their jewelry is being depicted, because it was also a symbol of their wealth. And another thing that is very typical of wealthy women in the Spanish Americas is that black element on their faces that are not molds and most likely are beauty marks that were embedded with herbal oils in order to help them deal with migraines and other afflictions. We try to pair real garments with those depicted in the paintings. And so this particular portrait is in direct conversation with a real garment coming to us from the amazing collection of LACMA. We chose to have those garments because even if they were not used in the Americas, they allow us to talk about how early globalization happened and how women, no matter if they lived in London, in Lima, or in Mexico City, share this taste for European garments. Wearing Social Status is a section that includes several Casta paintings. We included the only series made in Peru. It's the first time that they're on display in the United States, and therefore it's one of the reasons you should come and see the show. And they're fascinating because they depict the interracial relationships of the society of the time. But we see the different groups not only in their or through their skin color, but mainly through the way they are dressed. And I think it's significant how this couple depicting slaves just brought from Africa show coarse fabrics, very different from the ones that we have in the painting over there, where the Black woman, already in a relationship with a Spanish man, is wearing fabrics that are not only more delicate, but most importantly, full of ornaments, which is a symbol of how she was able to manage, her position within that society. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have learned something about painted cloth, fashion, and ritual in colonial Latin America. Hope to see you soon in the galleries.